Very, very good afternoon. Tuesday, the 11th of April 2023. I should have known. I should have known it would cause chaos. It wasn't my intention. My intention has always been to be, first and foremost, honest, I think. The reason I've got this far, the reason I'm still here, the reason they've not been able to lock me up or shut me down is because I'm not a liar. It's no more complicated than that. Your brain's hardwired to tell the truth. You never need to remember to tell the truth. It's just hardwired that way. And additionally, I'm not the brightest guy. If I was the brightest guy, I wouldn't be here doing this. I'd be somewhere else. Quite happily. I'm 50 in a couple of weeks. I'd quite happily retired maybe. Sat on the beach. So I would never promote myself to be the brightest guy. And one of my failings has always been my complete inability to look the other way when there's injustice done in front of me. And my friends who've known me since I was a child or at various points in my life will know that is how I am and who I am. For better or for worse. I want to start this afternoon, and my apologies for joining you slightly late. My day started at 5 a.m. I've been doing leaflets for people who won't take no for an answer, and they are friends of mine and family of mine, I suppose, in the scheme of things. So I dragged myself out of bed, got some court papers sent off, and started my day. So if I'm looking a little bit tired, it's because I've already been at it for something like 7 or 8 hours. And after I finish here with you today, I've got another 8 hours before I go and break my fast with some of my friends. I think we're going to the Turnpike, Signor Pe. Is that right? Our friend Marcus owns a lovely restaurant up there. So that's where we are heading this evening. So I'm sure I'll get fed very well. If you find value in my work, I know a few of you have joined recently. If you find value in my work, please consider taking out a subscription to the webpage. No one has. Or buying me a coffee to keep these transmissions going. There's lights all around me. There's video equipment. All of this costs money to turn on. And clearly I have value because over 1,000 of you watched yesterday's transmission. I want to start with a section out of the last full council meeting. I think now would be an apt point to play it through. It's going to take about 15 minutes or so, but I think though some of you may have watched it, but you need to watch it again because I'm going to share some of my thoughts on it. Very good evening to you, Denise, and also to you, Julie, who are just joining us. Thank you for taking the time out. I'm always overwhelmed by people who actually stop at work or take the time out just to listen to what I have to share. I find that still to this day very humbling. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. We move on to item 11, which is a notice of opposition business. May I remind members that this section at this meeting affords 15 minutes to each opposition motion, and we will be keeping within those time limits. I've had notification that Councillor Arnott is absent and that the Chief Executive has been given notice that Councillor Quigg will be seconding the motion. I call on Councillor Sharp to move and Councillor Quigg to second the motion. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm proud to propose this Conservative motion as printed and speak very briefly on it, as it is quite self-explanatory. Before I start, I would like just to quickly say that I know Councillor Arnott wanted to be here tonight, but due to being taken unwell in the night, he can't be. I'm very proud to be from Oldham. I've lived here all my life, I returned after university, and I look forward to spending many more years in Oldham. I find it very interesting to sit and speak with my grandparents, with residents who have lived in Oldham, again, their whole lives. They used to go into Oldham Town Centre on a Saturday. They could spend all day there for free because there was so much to do. It was free and it was the place to be. But now they're all expressing their complete dismay at the way our borough is being run by this Labour administration. They've had decades to perform and provide for the people of Oldham, and now the residents are clearly saying enough is enough. Every single meeting we sit in this chamber and listen to the leader and her cabinet members blame the Conservative government, blame COVID, everything else they can think of, instead of self-reflecting, looking in the mirror and accepting that they're actually the problem. I know some members will probably stand up later on and say that the government is a shambles, it wouldn't be able to effectively intervene. The usual lines about constant change in Conservative government leader, well, we could say that about Oldham Labour. They'd probably say that the government can't sort out the finances of the country. Well, neither can Labour in Oldham. I know which option I'd rather have and what option the residents of Oldham deserve. Councillor Chatterton mentioned before that the government is giving funding to Oldham because they're enjoying what we're doing and it's showing progress. I actually think it's to save Oldham from sinking into a deeper pit. It is time this council took some responsibility for the state that our borough is in. I won't mention council tax because that was covered enough last time we were in this room, but genuinely, Oldham is filthy. It's covered in litter, it's covered in hotspots for fly tipping. Residents I speak to in my ward are sick of clearing up litter for it to be there again a week later. They are sick of paying to live where the basic services are just not up for scratch. Now, I know the reply from the Labour benches again will be to blame the lack of government funding. However, to put the record straight, in the second round of Levelling Up funding, Oldham received the highest amount out of all the Greater Manchester authorities. In 2022-23, Oldham received more funding from the government than Bury and Trafford. In 2021-22, Oldham received more funding than Bury, Trafford and Tameside. I could go on. What do we have to show for this? A town centre on its knees compared with our neighbouring authorities which are on the rise. For too long, Labour have run Oldham and its reputation in the ground with failure after failure, overspend after overspend. $1 million here, $1 million there, but that clearly doesn't matter to Labour. Residents cannot justify how their money is being spent. This administration dodges accountability time after time, and it is clearly time for change in Oldham. And for the record, to the senior Labour officer who was too shy to be named and called me Beth Not So Sharp, it's actually sharp by name, sharp by nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Quick to second.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A generous person would say the leader of the council has been handed a poisoned chalice, given Oldham Council is now in its 5th leader, 3rd chief executive, and by my count, probably the 4th town centre master plan. However, such generosity is soon dispensed by the fact Councillor Chatterton sat at the cabinet table for the last decade, nodding through the failed plans and waste. But then again, I suppose Councillor Chatterton may be biding her time by keeping a leader's seat warm for her former colleague, Arun Shah. Perhaps, Madam Mayor, it's a common theme that emerges from the litany of abandoned projects that come out of Oldham Council, and it boils down to one thing: incompetence. I can say with confidence that there is now a belief amongst the people of this town that this council works in the interests of those who run it instead of those who pay for it. Instead of focusing on being a council and delivering top-class public services, the council continues to embark on its bid to replace Donald Trump in the property development game. I'm surprised Councillor Chatterton hasn't tried to twin Spindles with Mar-a-Lago. Even before Christmas, the council was still pushing the line that Prince's Gate was on track, yet it was always past its sell-by date and was already reduced to clear. Lidl not coming to Oldham shows the wheels have truly come off, especially when you examine the fact that Lidl will be opening 1,000 new stores by the end of 2023. And yes, even Marks & Spencer, as part of a £480 million investment in its bricks and mortar store estate, is set to open 30 new stores and 12 new food halls across the UK. In the ability to not admit that they failed and having exhausted the little book of spin according to Jim, the leader of the council decides that it's the Russians to blame, Brexit, COVID, and any other ex-bandwagon that comes along for the Labour Council to hitch its blame wagon to. These problems have been a decade in the making. The facts speak for themselves. Hotel Future, was meant to deliver £4.3 million to the economy of every year. It never happened. Hollingwood Leisure Complex, and I quote, bring in an entertainment complex featuring restaurants, a bowling alley and a cinema. It never happened. We were meant to have £60 million retail development with an M&S, which was meant to bring in £21 million a year to the local economy. It never happened. A new Oldham Coliseum Theatre, costing £27 million. That never happened. We were meant to have quality homes around the site, yet the council had no partner to deliver it because the council's own assessment stated it's not economically viable. And again, it never happened. Buying the Spindles Town Centre Town Square and Shopping Centre, a bargain according to the former leader, but with an estimated bill of over £70 million and rising, just to fix it up. The Town Hall Cinema, which was meant to cost £10 million, but cost over £42 million. And the flagship Egyptian tea rooms remaining empty for years and now being propped up yet again with more taxpayers' cash. I could go on. But for a second, let's just think that this Labour administration has not acted alone. No, the officers at the top have allowed this to happen, and they have a lot to answer for. Instead of good governance, we have chaos and waste. The public are tired and weary of this council's failures and excuses. Constantly hunting for the next big headline to save the skin of the new town centre master plan, no amount of spin from the comms team can hide the fact it's wearing thin. It is time this council cleared the decks and changed the crew on the top deck and brought in a new team. And yes, let me be clear, that means Oldham finding a new CEO and a new top team that has the confidence of the people of Oldham. We need transparency, openness, with the sole aim of rebuilding Oldham Council from the bottom up and making it work in the interests of those who pay for it. We have had the youngest council leader, the first Asian council leader, and the first LGBT council leader. But what the people of Oldham really haven't had is a competent council leader. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. There's time for two brief speakers. Amanda Chatterton, Councillor Chatterton, should say, is agreed. Is in one more speaker?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, before I suppose I get on to how factually incorrect both the motion is and the past 7 or so minutes have been, can I first say what an absolute embarrassment Oldham Conservative Group are to this town. They stand there, don't they, with a full outrage, stomping their feet and shouting when it's clear to everybody that this is electioneering, plain and simple. And what a coincidence that the last council before local elections, they suddenly care about the reputation of the council. Now, if we want to have a conversation about the reputation of the council, then we should look a little closer to home, shouldn't we, for the Conservative group? I think it's time they reflected on the type of people they select to be candidates, the type of people that remain in their group, and the type of people that they converse with on social media. I can assure them that it's the reputation of Oldham Conservative group that is at an all-time low. People are not blind to how they behave in this chamber, the disinformation they spread, and how they have significantly contributed to a toxic political debate in Oldham. However, let's move on to whether what they claim is true, or are they simply making things up? Are Oldham residents really dissatisfied with basic public services in Oldham? So, according to our recent resident survey, 82% of our residents are satisfied with our waste collection services, over 80% are satisfied with our parks and green spaces, 72% of residents are satisfied with sports and leisure services, 65% of people are satisfied with our library centres, and over 2/3 of our residents are satisfied with our street cleaning services. But what residents are concerned about, though, Madam Mayor, and I'm sure this will interest the Conservative group, over 60% of people are worried about changes to the household income, 83% are worried about the cost of living crisis in the energy bills, nearly 80% are worried about the cost of food, and just under half of Oldham are worried about paying their rent or mortgage and getting into personal debt. Now, at a time when the cost of living crisis is having such a profound impact on our residents, not only do the Conservatives want to remove all support we're giving to residents at the moment, they think that the most pressing issue this council and the residents of this town face is the capacity to write bids for external funding. Is that really all they want to ask their government to help the people of Oldham? They want somebody to come and write bids. So let's talk about bid writing, shall we? Because over the past 5 years, Oldham has been one of the most successful councils in Greater Manchester when it comes to securing external investment. You don't need to take my word for it. In this period, Oldham Council has secured £137 million of external investment, predominantly from central government. And that is because central government have looked at our plans, recognised our ambition and our ability to deliver. And it does really come to something, as I said earlier, when the Conservative government recognise the potential of this town and are more positive about Oldham than our own Conservative councillors are. In the motion, Madam Mayor asked me to write to government and ask for help. I don't need to. We're in constant dialogue with the government. In fact, only this morning, the Chief Executive received a phone call from the government to say we've been identified as a new levelling up area and will receive a share of £400 million. That is directly off the back of the work the Chief Executive and myself have done over the past 12 months with the government. Finally,
I can't let that slide. Amanda Chadderton is attempting to claim credit for the levelling up money, a direct consequence of her work. Have you heard that woman speak? She's not capable of writing a bid or writing a sentence, not her direct work at all. And you know what? It's off. It's not off bid writers. It's off pimping the poverty of our town, because that is what Amanda Chadderton and her Labour Party have done for decades. Got fat off pimping the poverty of our town. That's what Labour is, and that's what a vote for Labour is. Poverty pimps. Pimping the poverty of our town so they get fatter and wealthier. Sorry, I couldn't let that go. I just couldn't let that woman. She is, of all the council leaders we've taken out, she is the worst of them. She's worse than Sean Fielding. She's worse than Arood Shah. And as for the types of people the Conservatives hang about with and the social media, while she was talking, a man called Akil Salamat walked in the background. He's the Labour Party councillor for St Mary's. Akil Salamat is a convicted benefit fraudster.
Mayor, we are a town that had Winston Churchill as our MP. One of our neighbouring areas in Bury was the birthplace and home of Robert Peel, two great Conservative Prime Ministers who improved this country for the better. The modern-day Oldham Conservative group are as far away from these two men as it is possible to be. It's clear to me that Oldham Conservatives have no plan, they aren't serious about improving the town or the lives of our residents, they have absolutely no ambition or vision, and sadly contribute very little to making Oldham better. On this side of the chain, Madam Mayor, we love Oldham, we know the potential of this great town, and Oldham Labour is committed to building a better borough. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Chadderton. Councillor Hobin, can you be concise, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I sit here as an independent, and I'm going to try not to shout because I think the last two people have been shouting. So, as I sit here as an independent and looking at the motions that come through here, me and Councillor Ray have been saying these motions are coming forward and they're not really anything to do with Oldham. They're like national issues that we don't really have much of a say in. So that confuses me, and it's like ping-ponging here sometimes. It's the Labour Party blaming the Tories, and the Tories blaming the Labour Party, and somewhere in the middle the Lib Dems get blamed for everything as well. I think the only people that don't get blamed for most of the things are us people sat at the back in the cheap seats here. But this motion, I don't understand it really, because it seems to be having a go at council officers and the Chief Executive, and I've no personal relationship apart from a working relationship with them, and I find them amenable every time I speak to them. But surely we should be, or if the motion was right, it would be attacking the administration. And we'd just be going out, instead of saying, let's have a go at the Chief Executive and let's have a go at the officers, we should just be putting the case to the residents in the next election in May and saying, if you want change, vote against this administration. It's not vote against the officers, not sack the officers, it's to convince people out there to vote in the way that you want them to vote. So, should we stop playing games in here? Do the games out there. Let's debate Oldham things in this place. Let's stop blaming officers. Let's blame the people that are the administration that have brought this town to where it is, and just explain that to people and say, use your vote in May, get off your butt, vote or post, and get something done. But this motion's just gas, really. and we've talked a lot about that tonight. So I can't back the motion because I think you're aiming it at the wrong people.
Thank you. Councillor Hobin. Councillor Sharp, do you wish to reply? You've got 1 minute to do so.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to thank Councillor Hobin for his comments, and if he had something that he wished to debate, he should have presented a motion for us. Councillor Chadderton, again, I think you should spend more time focusing on the stuff that your group is doing instead of the makeup of our council group. And if the Labour administration had anything about them, until they stand up and admit that there's problems in Oldham, nothing will be sorted out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Does the council agree the motion? Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? The motion's lost. Motion 2, I call on Councillor Al-Hamdani to move.
Okay. So Brian Hobin backed the Labour Party. You could see that there. And not just with a vote, he stood up and backed the Labour Party, and he claimed that the wrong people, the Conservatives, were attacking the wrong people. And the motion was to call the government in. Essentially, come in and take over the town. These council officers have no clue. These are the same council officers that have been instrumental in covering up the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. These are the council officers that have been instrumental in messing up the Coliseum Theatre. These are the council officers who, after this meeting, released documents with £1 million bribe for votes for Oldham Athletic. And Beth Sharp was right. Brian Hobin should present his motions. So when I watched that, and some of you, by the way, got in touch with me and said Montaz voted with the Labour Party, I shrugged my shoulders. I can't convince people to do what I think is right. I can't tell them to do what I think is right. I can only support and encourage, which is what I do to FIP and all the other independents, and indeed the Conservatives. I support, critique and encourage, and hope that they can find some courage to do the right thing. Why did Brian Hobin vote with the Labour Party? Does he not believe that the government needs to be called in? Harry Caffrell was appointed through a backdoor appointment, a very dodgy appointment. You've seen the actions of the borough solicitor. You've seen the actions of Gerard Jones, the Director of Children's Services. Why is Brian Hobin cozying up to the council officers and supporting the Labour Party? I can only hypothesize, and this is before the fallout. This is before what happened with the announcements last week of the split and how Failsworth Independents were also going to contest in the West as well as stay in the East. My friend Mohib is a Lib Dem. You all know he's a Lib Dem. And I remember at the time the Liberal Democrats got in bed with the Conservatives and formed a coalition government. I said to my friend Mohib, this is the end of your party for a generation. Not just in Parliament, but it'll have devastating impact in councils across the country. And they got wiped out. They got wiped out in Parliament, where even the leader of the Lib Dems got voted out in Sheffield. And the councils they controlled, they just got wiped out. Because they got into bed with the Conservatives and propped up a Conservative government. If we are to get to where we need to be in a couple of weeks, which is move this council into no overall control, it's dependent on a number of factors. First of all, it's dependent upon the likes of Lewis, Beth, and Dave Arnott holding on to their seats. Have they done enough? I don't know. I hope they have. I hope they have. See, I'm a pragmatist. I don't take any of this personally. They can do whatever they want to me. I believe in the benefit of this town, and for the benefit of this town, those three need to stay in. I'd hope Beth Sharp would have done a deal with Amoy and backed her in return. Amoy's 300 votes would have seen Beth definitely over the line and would have seen Amoy as a much needed African Caribbean face on that council. Much needed. I think it's too Muslim centric. I think it's too Asian centric in terms of Pakistani and Bangladeshi centric. There's not even an Indian on there either. It's not representative at all of the of the town, and that's a fault on the mainstream parties. That's a conversation for another day. But I think the first factor is a Conservative. Those three need to hold on to the seats. We put Warren Bates up as an independent in Chadderton South, and I genuinely hope we can get him over the line. There are independents elsewhere, but we need to get to no overall control. Having watched this clip of Brian Hobin brown-nosing the council officers, and everything that's gone on since, for one moment, say we get it to no overall control, and Labour end up with 29 or 30 seats. Who will do a deal with the Labour Party? Who will do a deal with the Labour Party to keep them in power? Prop them up the way the Lib Dems did. Now, I know Brian Hobin will get, as it stands, I think he'll come first in Failsworth East, and he'll be guaranteed 4 more years. Neil Hindle will get the 3 years, and I think Lucia will just end up with 1 year. That's my analysis of what I think will happen in Failsworth East in terms of 1, 2, 3. And I've maintained my position. Again, if I lived in Failsworth East, I would vote for those 3. Because I think the alternative is worse. Short term and long term. But say Labour end up with 29 seats. Will the Lib Dems get into bed with them? I don't think so. It's not in their interests. The Conservatives definitely won't form an alliance with the Labour Party. Who's left? I don't think Aftab will. He's an independent. If Montans gets over the line, he might do. He used to be a Labour Party councillor. I don't know. But I do think FIP will. Or have the potential to, at the very least. Of course, Brian can come out, or Neil, or Lucia, and categorically say that under no circumstances will they enter into a coalition with Oldham Labour Party. But that is what I think is at play here. For those of you who've asked, that is what I think is at play here. And that's why not only did he vote against the motion, he stood up, Brian Hobin stood up and defended the council officers that have been instrumental in the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. Proven. You've seen the reports. You've seen Burnham's assurance review. You've seen what he had to say about Gerard Jones. You've seen what he had to say about previous council officers. I'm not a politician. And watching this I find it so disheartening. I come from an Asian community where it was easy to bribe our councillors. And they were bribed. Are bribed. Very easy to bribe them. The position of mayor was the ultimate prize. Ceremonial. Put a picture on your mantelpiece. Send it back to Bangladesh, Pakistan, wherever. You saw Dr. Chauhan fly out to Pakistan to announce he'd become deputy mayor. Lord only knows what he'll do if he became mayor. Let me show you a couple of things because I'm not a liar. Never have been, never will be. Try and bring it up on here. This is an email that you can see it's on thick letter-headed paper. 27th of March was sent out by Brian Hobin. Dear member, sent out to the members of FIPS, yep. Following the candidate selection process, there have been a number of meetings between councillors and candidates. The result of these meetings is that the following will go forward to stand in the local election in May 2023. Sandra Ball, West, Alan Brady, West, Neil Hindle, East, Brian Hobin, East, Lucia Ray, East, Mark Wilkinson, West. We hope that this year we can achieve a full independent Failsworth and wish each candidate the best of luck. This is a text message exchange, and I've told you I'm not a liar, with Brian Hobin. Remember, I had promised to hold resignation letters of Sandra and Mark in my hand until the evening of the Monday, where I would hand them over to Brian, and in return, the Failsworth Independent Party would not put up candidates in the West. And in return, I had Mark and Sandra's word that they wouldn't do anything in the East. Evening, Raja. You can see Monday the 3rd of April. Hope you're well. How many independents have you got standing across the borough? Well, I haven't, but you know what I mean. Also, could I have those resignation letters now so that I can respond and confirm? Cheers. So the evening of the Monday night, 1923, 7:23, Brian Hobin, Councillor Brian Hobin, asked me for those resignation letters on the basis that everything was proceeding as agreed. As agreed, as he'd already confirmed to his members on the 27th of March. You can see my response, of course, Brian. I'll forward the resignation letters on when I get home this evening. They were stored on my computer, I just didn't have them on my phone. As for the independents, I think there's at least one candidate in every ward just waiting to hear in Chaddington North. We didn't get one in Chaddington North and we didn't get one in Wornath, but we've got independent candidates across the board in 18 of the other wards, which I think is good. And you can see 2052 in your inbox. I hear there's a malicious numpty out there. How you doing, Willa Booby? Need to get a life, I think, lad. Withdrawal of a candidate before the deadline. I don't spend my life in a room looking at the walls, talking to myself through various social media personas that I have. Talking to myself, replying to myself. I come from a different place. I think that's very clear by now. A nominated candidate can withdraw their candidature if they do so before the deadline Our withdrawal notice is not prescribed in legislation, but we do provide a template withdrawal notice for candidates to use. Delivered by 4 p.m. on the 19th working day before the poll. That's the deadline. The 19th working day before the poll is today. I have lots more emails, text messages, screen grabs. I'd rather not. You've all seen what I can do and how I do it. My plea to the Failsworth Independents is I'd rather not. In the same way, I'd rather not share the text messages from Brian Hobin yesterday, where he attempted to blame me. Everyone makes mistakes, Brian. And everyone's tempted, one way or another in life. We all are. But at the end of the day, the making of a man or a woman, indeed, this or whatever the in-betweens are, I can't keep up, is can you look at yourself in the mirror? And the reason why I'm still here is because I can. My name is Raja Mia. I look forward to seeing you all soon. If you find value in these transmissions, please like, please share. And if you're able to do so, please consider subscribing to the webpage, or at the very least buying me a coffee to keep these transmissions going. Very good afternoon.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.